Imagine it is the darkness of night. Clouds are thundering in the sky. The wind is blowing as if someone has provoked the sea into going to war. And a small boat is swaying helplessly between the waves. The disciples, most of whose lives had been spent on land, some of them even fishermen, are for the first time realizing that their experience cannot save them today. Water is filling the boat. The fear of death has grown louder than the roar of the wind. And in that same boat, there is one man who is sleeping peacefully. This is no ordinary sleep. It is the calm that belongs only to the one who knows what the destination is, and who the master of that destination is. This story is not just about a storm. It is the story of an authority that remains hidden from human sight, and of a battle that is being fought not only in water and wind, but also in the spiritual realm. The Bible tells us that when Jesus said, "Let us go over to the other side," it was not merely a journey to the other shore of the lake. The place Jesus was going to was the region of the Gerasenes, Gentile land, where a man lived who was under the control of a legion of evil spirits. Satan knew that if Jesus reached that place, not only would one man be set free, but an entire kingdom of darkness would suffer loss. That is why the storm was so severe. The Bible does not describe it as an ordinary wind. Rather, it feels as though forces had gathered together to stop this journey. Here we learn a deep truth. When you are walking according to God's will, not every obstacle is merely natural. Some obstacles are opposition. Jesus was sleeping in the boat, and this made the disciples even more anxious. Their question was not only that they were about to drown, but also, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" This question is very human. Even today, when we are in trouble, when prayer does not seem to be answered immediately, when God appears silent, the same thought arises in our hearts, that perhaps He does not care. But Jesus' silence was not His indifference. It was a sign of His complete confidence. He knew that the journey which had begun by His command would also end under His authority. When the disciples woke Him, Jesus stood up and first rebuked not the water, but the wind. The words of the Bible are very deep. He rebuked the wind, as if scolding a living being. This was not merely commanding the weather, it was stopping the power that was working behind the storm. Then He said to the water, "Be quiet, be still." And immediately a great calm came. Not gradually, not over time, but all at once. This was the display of an authority that belongs only to the Creator. The Psalms say that God stills the waves of the sea, and here Jesus is doing the same thing, because He is not only a prophet, but the Son of God. At that moment, the disciples' fear was no longer of the water, but of the one who was standing with them in the boat. They said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the water obey Him?" This was a fear of worship, a fear of recognition. When a human being encounters God's authority for the first time, the heart trembles. After calming the storm, Jesus asked them, "Where is your faith?" Notice, He did not ask why they woke Him, but where their faith had gone. This means that faith does not mean the absence of storms, but trusting God in the midst of the storm. From this event, we also learn that Jesus did not bring the boat to the shore before calming the storm. Sometimes God does not remove the difficulty immediately, but displays His authority so that we may recognize Him. And the deepest truth of all is this: if Jesus is in the boat cannot sink, even if water comes inside. The storms of life can shake us and frighten us, but they cannot destroy us when the Son of God is with us. This journey does not end here, because after this storm, another battle was to be fought. on land, among the tombs, where a man lived who had lost his identity. The storm was only the prelude to that battle. And this truth is also for us today. Many times our storms come because somewhere ahead, freedom, healing, and deliverance are waiting. God wants to take us to the other side, and the enemy wants to stop us in the middle. But the one who silenced the wind and the water can also silence every darkness. When the boat reached the shore, it felt as though the storm had been left behind. But in reality, the true battle was about to begin. The roar of the sea had fallen silent, yet on the land the screams of darkness still remained. As soon as Jesus stepped out of the boat, a man came toward him, not from the city, but emerging from among the tombs. This was no ordinary man. There were no clothes on his body, no control over his mind, and no authority of his own over his spirit. People had tried to bind him with chains, but he broke those chains apart. Human strength had become meaningless against him, because this was not a problem of the body, but of the soul. Here we understand a very deep truth. Jesus had stepped out of the boat solely to meet this one man, not for the city, not for the crowd, but for that single person whom the world had abandoned, one who lived among the graves, that is, living a life like the dead while still alive. Satan's greatest deception is this. He convinces a person that they are no longer worthy, that their story is finished. But for Jesus, no story is ever finished. As soon as the man came near Jesus, he ran and fell down before him. But the voice was not his own. The evil spirits cried out, saying, "Jesus, Son of the Most High God, why are you tormenting us?" Notice this. The one whom people could not recognize, whom society called insane, was recognized by the powers of darkness. These spirits knew that the one who walks on the sea, who rebukes the storm, was now standing before them. Jesus asked, "What is your name?" This question was not because Jesus did not know, but so that the truth might be revealed. The answer came, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Here we must understand that the enemy always displays his strength so that a person will be afraid. "We are many" meant that this man's life was completely under control. But the measure of power is not numbers. It is authority. And authority belonged only to Jesus. The evil spirits begged that they not be sent out of the region, and that they be allowed to enter a herd of pigs. This too teaches us a truth. Evil spirits cannot act anywhere without permission. Those who think that darkness is an equal power are mistaken. Darkness always bows before the light. Jesus gave permission, and all those spirits came out of the man and went into the pigs. The result was that the herd of pigs went mad, rushed into the lake, and drowned. This scene was not only terrifying, but filled with a message. Wherever Satan goes, destruction follows. Whether it is a human being or an animal, his end is always loss. But the man whom people could not bind, whom no one could control, was now in his right mind, clothed, and sitting at the feet of Jesus. This transformation was so profound that instead of rejoicing, the people of the city became afraid. They saw that their property was gone, the pigs had drowned, and their normal life had been shaken. Sometimes we do not like God's work because he frees someone else through our loss. The townspeople pleaded with Jesus to leave their region. Think about it. Where one man received new life, an entire community rejected the Messiah. This is also a truth. When God breaks the boundaries of our personal benefit, not everyone accepts him. The man who once lived among the tombs now wanted to stay with Jesus. He begged him to take him along. But Jesus stopped him and said, "Go home to your people and tell them what God has done for you." This was the first time someone was sent to bear witness in a Gentile region. The man whose life itself had become a testimony did not need a stage or a pulpit. His transformation was the message. From here, we learn that not everyone is meant to sit in the boat and travel. Some people are meant to stay on the shore and bear witness. And not everyone is with Jesus physically. He is with some people through their story. The storm had come so that this man could be set free. The boat had been shaken so that the one living among the graves could become a living human being again. And even today, when storms come into our lives, perhaps the reason is that somewhere a Gerasene is waiting our path. Some soul is waiting for freedom. And God wants to take us to the other side, no matter how difficult the road may be. The people of the city sent Jesus away, but his presence did not end there. The boat was turning back. This time the waves were calm, but now the story was no longer about the sea or evil spirits, but about human hearts. On one side was the man who had lived among the tombs and was now going throughout the whole region telling his story. And on the other side were those who were walking with Jesus but still could not fully understand him. This part shows us that when God silences the outward storm, the inward storms often still remain. When Jesus returned to the other side of the lake, a crowd was waiting for him. Here a complete contrast appears. In the Gentile region, people rejected him because of loss. And here his own people gathered around him with benefit and hope. In that crowd was a man named Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue. Despite honor, position, and reputation, he fell at Jesus' feet. This scene teaches us that when life stands between death and life, rank and titles become meaningless. Jairus said, "My daughter is near death." This was not just a father's request, but the cry of a broken heart. Jesus set out with him, but the path was not straight. The crowd pressed in around him, and within that crowd, another story was hidden. A woman who had been suffering from bleeding for 12 years, whose money, dignity, and hope were all exhausted. 12 years. The same length of time as the life of Jairus' daughter. In one house, life was fading, and in another life was flowing away. This was not coincidence, but God's design. That woman thought that if she could only touch his clothes, she would be healed. This was a silent faith that makes a way even through the noise of the crowd. As soon as she touched him, her bleeding stopped immediately. But Jesus stopped. On a journey whose destination was a dying child, a voiceless woman was heard first. Jesus asked, "Who touched me?" This question was not because he did not know, but so that the hidden healing could become a testimony. The woman came forward trembling, but Jesus gave her not only healing, he gave her identity. "Daughter, your faith has saved you." After 12 years, someone called her daughter. At that very moment, news came from Jairus' house. "Your daughter has died. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." Here the hardest test of faith appears. When delay has come, when it seems that nothing can be done anymore, one sentence from Jesus changes the entire picture. "Do not be afraid. Only believe." These words are for those moments when the story seems finished. For Jesus, even death is not a closed door. In Jairus' house there was weeping and wailing. People laughed when Jesus said that the girl was only sleeping. The world always mocks what God is saying. Jesus sent everyone outside, keeping only the parents and his closest disciples inside. God's work often happens away from the noise. Then he took the girl by the hand and said, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately she got up and began to walk. The hand that had slipped from life grasped life again. Here is a deep mystery. The Jesus who can rebuke the storm, who can drive out a legion of demons, also commands between life and death. But the purpose of every miracle is not merely to display power, but to deepen faith. The disciples saw his authority in the storm, his deliverance in Gerasa, and here they saw the test of his mercy and his timing. Sometimes he works immediately, sometimes after delay, but never at the wrong time. In this part, we also understand that God is working on many stories at the same time. When you feel that your journey has stopped, perhaps he is touching someone else's life. Jairus had to wait, and in the waiting, his faith was reshaped. The woman had to come in secret, and through coming in secret, her identity was revealed. Every story was different, but the center was the same: Jesus. Now this journey does not stop here. What began with a storm, passed through the tombs, and ended with life in a room is actually giving one message. When Jesus is in the boat, when Jesus is before you, when Jesus holds your hand, then neither storm, nor demon, nor disease, nor death makes the final decision. The final authority always belongs to the one who can say, "I am." And now, as we come to the final turn of this journey, the question no longer remains who Jesus is, but who we have become. The storm, the tombs, the crowd, the room in the house, all these scenes were, in reality, a single invitation, not just to see God, but to trust Him. In the storm, the disciples had asked in fear, "Who is this?" And now, without words, their hearts were answering, "This is the one in whose hands everything rests." The man from Gerasa became a witness. Jairus' house was filled with joy, and the woman who had touched in secret now lived with open identity. These are different stories, yet they all declare the same truth. Jesus meets each person in a different way, but every encounter changes life. Some meet him in a boat, some among the tombs, some in a crowd, and some in the quiet of a room. God is one, but his nearness is different for every heart. Now we look at the boat of our own life. Perhaps storms are rising again. Perhaps water has already come in. Perhaps it feels like it is too late. But the conclusion of this whole story is this: if he has given the command to go to the other side, then reaching there is certain. The road may be difficult, but the destination is secure. Faith does not mean that questions do not arise. It means that despite the questions, we remain in the same boat where Jesus is present. The final thing to remember is that after all these miracles, Jesus did not command that he be made famous. Instead, he most often chose silence. Because God's work is not merely to create temporary emotion, but to bring deep transformation. Even today, he asks us the same question: where is your faith? This question is not an accusation. It is an invitation to place our fear, our delay, and our brokenness into his hands. And when we do so, the storm may not stop immediately, but peace certainly comes into the heart. Because the greatest truth of all is this: the safety of the boat does not depend on the storm stopping, but on the presence of Jesus. The one who can rebuke the sea, who can drive out legions, who can raise the dead, is alive today. And today he still says, "Do not be afraid, I am here."